Welcome back to ARAP. Tonight, we're diving into a story that's been quietly shaking the walls of Washington and sending shockwaves through the internet. Newly unearthed emails from the Epstein files have surfaced, and they appear to implicate some of the most powerful people in America, including former President Donald Trump. The revelations are raising serious questions about what was hidden, who was involved, and why so many have gone to such extraordinary lengths to keep it buried. In one of the leaked emails, Jeffrey Epstein wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell saying, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." Maxwell replied simply, "I've been thinking about that." That short exchange alone has stirred massive debate, suggesting there was silence around Trump's involvement that Epstein himself found suspicious. Then, in another message, Epstein wrote, "Victim Mar-a-Lago. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember, ever." Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked G to stop. The cryptic wording of this email is fueling speculation about what exactly Epstein was referring to, and whether Trump knew more than he let on about the darker side of Epstein's network. A third email reveals a conversation between journalist Michael Wolff and Epstein. Wolff wrote, "I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in the scrum afterwards." Epstein responded, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Wolff replied, "Let him hang himself. If he denies being on the plane or in the house, that gives you political currency. But if it looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt." It's a conversation that feels less like gossip and more like strategy, as if Trump's relationship with Epstein wasn't just personal, but political leverage in waiting. So why does any of this matter now? Because these revelations might help explain why Trump seemed so determined to keep certain Epstein-related investigations under wraps during his presidency. Reports have claimed that when then Attorney General Pam Bondi informed Trump that his name appeared in the Epstein materials, he didn't react by ordering a full probe into Epstein's network. Instead, sources say he directed FBI attention toward controlling the narrative and managing any potential fallout that involved him personally. That's where figures like House Speaker Mike Johnson enter the picture. Johnson recently faced criticism for cutting the House session short, an action some insiders allege was designed to stall a potential vote tied to the release of the Epstein files. When questioned about this, Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva pointed out that when Trump was campaigning, he promised transparency around Epstein's connections. But after seeing what those files contained, his administration seemed to shift its approach entirely. As Grijalva put it, when they realized what was really in those files, they probably thought it wasn't such a good idea anymore. She noted that Speaker Johnson had even sent lawmakers home a week early, allegedly to avoid a floor vote that could have forced more disclosures. Her comments paint a picture of a government nervous about what the public might see. Johnson, for his part, rejected those claims, accusing Democrats of political theater. In a recent statement, he argued Democrats didn't say one word about the Epstein files during the entire Biden presidency. Now they pretend to care because they think it'll hurt Trump. But critics have countered that this isn't about politics. It's about transparency. And here's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Trump and his allies have repeatedly called the Epstein scandal a hoax, yet Trump himself has spoken openly about Epstein in the past, and not dismissively. On the campaign trail, Trump once said of Epstein, "He's got a lot of problems coming up with that island." At another event, he referred to Epstein's island as a cesspool. Those statements were made when the scandal was convenient political ammunition. But now, with new files linking Trump more closely to Epstein, the same narrative is suddenly labeled as fake news. Even members of Trump's own circle once called for full transparency. Former cabinet officials publicly demanded the release of the Epstein list, arguing that withholding it was protecting the world's most prolific predator. One official asked, "Why is the FBI protecting the largest-scale pedophile in human history, regardless of who may be embarrassed by that list?" It's a haunting question, and one that's resurfacing now that these new communications are out. Because if the list truly exposes powerful figures from across the political spectrum, The instinct to hide it might not be partisan at all. It might simply be self-preservation. Still, the political implications are impossible to ignore. Trump's critics say this explains his urgency to prevent Congress from reconvening or voting on measures that could bring those files to light. His supporters, on the other hand, see it as another example of an endless campaign to discredit him. But either way, the tension between truth and control has never been clearer. If the new emails are authentic, and if they accurately reflect Trump's proximity to Epstein, then America is facing a reckoning that cuts across parties and personalities. It challenges not just what people believe about Trump, but what they believe about power itself. Because for years, politicians, journalists, and even intelligence agencies have promised that full transparency on Epstein would come someday. That someday never arrived. Instead, the case ended abruptly with Epstein's death, leaving behind questions that only grew darker with time. Now, the slow drip of new evidence is forcing those questions back to the surface. Who protected Epstein for so long? Who benefited from his silence? And how deep does the network of influence really go? For all his denials, Trump's position in this story is no longer one of an outside observer. The emails suggest he was in the room, maybe not always complicit, but never completely separate. And that's what makes this so explosive. At the end of the day, this isn't about Democrats or Republicans. It's about whether justice in America bends around power, whether the truth about Epstein will ever be fully known, or if it will be buried again, this time under layers of political spin and media noise. So as the dust settles from this latest revelation, one question remains. When all the names are finally revealed and all the evidence is laid bare, will those who once promised transparency still stand by their word? Or will they run for cover? Because no matter how loudly the headlines scream or how many times politicians call it a hoax, truth has a way of coming out. And once it does, there's no unseeing it. Thanks for watching. If you value independent journalism and want to stay connected no matter what happens with social platforms, make sure to subscribe and join the newsletter linked on screen. It's free, and it ensures that voices asking hard questions, voices like yours, can't be silenced. This is A-Rap. Stay curious. Stay awake.